The cerebral memory might go away, but the emotional memory stays. And for people with dementia or Alzheimer's, empathy to them is a superpower. They are present and they're ultra present in the moment because they don't have as much going on, right? They're not sitting there thinking about memories. They're ultra present. And so they reflect back to you often the energy that you give to them. Our AI companions are patient enough to have conversations with the people living with dementia that many other people aren't patient enough to have with them. And so we're seeing really good benefits there too. What we're trying to do is push cortisol out of the brain and bring oxytocin into the brain that makes someone feel loved and connected.
Without the medication. Hello again, and welcome to the DGTL Growth Podcast, where business leaders share their growth, success, and challenges. I'm Suse Barnes. Today, we are talking with Matt Tullis, founder of Vallige, which is an AI-powered comfort, care, and connection companion for people living with dementia and the families and professionals who care for them. Matt, I'm really excited to hear more about Vallige and what you're up to.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me on here. Vallige is it's a company that's born out of my personal experience. I'm actually here in Moraga, California right now at my parents' house. My mom has dementia. We found out that she had dementia. She got diagnosed back in 2018. My dad's been the primary caregiver for her ever since. They're both 80, 81 right now. And so Vallige started as a personal project for myself and my family to try to help out where I could. Turned into something that was pretty magical and something that we then turned into a company, and we're 18 months in and have just been running a pilot with about 15 families currently using the technology and had some good results, and are excited to grow from here.
Great. Are you able to share any of the results or any stories from the trial, from the pilot so far?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of really, really positive feedback from caregivers. So we focus primarily on supporting families that are caring for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, as you mentioned. We look at this thing as something that needs to be solved holistically. We feel strongly that the caregiver in many ways is the person most impacted by this syndrome disease, right? So Alzheimer's is a disease. Dementia is a symptom of that disease. You can get dementia from other things other than just Alzheimer's. So that my mom has vascular dementia. There's also Lewy body dementia and frontotemporal dementia and Parkinson's related dementia. Those are kind of the bigger ones. But yeah, so my mom has vascular dementia. We work with people that have all types of dementia, and we work with people at various levels of cognitive impairment. And we've seen positive results across the board. The first thing that we do that kind of makes us a little bit unique is that we leverage the power of a familiar face and a familiar voice to comfort the person with dementia. And so when I say it started as a personal project, I originally started using the various AI tools out there to clone myself. So that my mom could have someone to speak with, because my parents are fiercely independent and they wanted to stay at home. And my mom also pretty heavily rejected the idea of a caregiver coming in for a long time. You know, she didn't, like a lot of people, they're like, who's this in my house? You know, it's a tough thing to get over. But often she would call myself or my sister 30 times in 30 minutes. And we you know, it's just repeat because she couldn't remember that she'd already reached out to us. She was trying to find my dad or had another question. Often she would call her parents who were no longer with us because she thought they were alive. And so she would call my sister and myself. And so I used some voice clones to create someone for her to speak with, and then also a video version of myself, kind of like, you know, a Zoom call. And yeah, it worked really well. So started using it with her, had a couple moments where I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And I think people could benefit from this. Started a company, hired some engineers to make it a little bit better because I had done most of the coding myself up to that point. And while I have a computer science degree, I haven't spent much time on that side of things in a long time. So we work with families that are living independently. We work with families that have some paid care providers coming into the home. And we work with some families that have 24/7 care. And earlier this year, I should say, we had our first family that is actually in a memory care center. And so we work with people across the board. We offer interactive, what we call talk stories, that are like calls with our AI companions that look and sound like family members. We also offer mood shifters, which are poems, essentially poems and jokes that are from, again, the person's history of their life. There's inspiring poems that make them out to really celebrate their life and their journey from where they were born to where they live, and kids and grandkids and all those things that kind of light them up. And we bring photos in alongside those so that they can hear this poem from a familiar voice and see photos that reminisce. And we have other features like every day we do a daily digest video from a family member, which helps them feel connected to someone. And it gives them just the on this date type facts and what happened back in Hollywood on this date, or sports on this date, or famous birthdays and things like that. And we just focus on giving a lot of content to them that keeps them comforted. And fundamentally, what we're trying to deliver is respite on demand. And so when a caregiver needs it most is often when it's hardest to get a break. And so that's what we try to do. So if you're having a rough time or rough day, you can pull your phone out, hit a button, and all of a sudden, hey, look, AI Matt's calling. And then, it gives a change of face, which is common in this dementia world, which is sometimes they're struggling with the person in front of them and they just need a different face that kind of redirects them.
Is the familiar voice, familiar face, I assume that's particularly helpful because they want to see somebody they know. I mean, I imagine it being easier transition than just some comedian telling them a joke.
Yeah, definitely. What we're seeing is that, and again, Alzheimer's is a terrible disease, and it's kind of understood that at a certain point, sometimes not only will someone have delusions that someone's alive that's not, they might be having a conversation with their actual son or daughter and be unable to recognize that person is their son and daughter.
Yeah.
But what we see is that person's face and voice still has a comforting factor. Right. There's still a sense of safety. And I like to think of it as that the cerebral memory might go away, but the emotional memory stays. And so they know they're safe with someone, they know they're comfortable with someone. And so that's what we're tapping into there. And, earlier you asked if there's any success stories, and I kind of wandered over and tried to explain a little bit of what we do. But some of the biggest success stories we've had and we've recently done a collection of video testimonials from the caregivers in our program. One of the women that's a primary caregiver, she has her mother's aging in place in her own home, and they have 24/7 care. But often the care provider that's there can't really calm her mom. And so she would used to get lots of calls a day, like, hey, like, she's just not listening to us. She needs to hear this from you. And so she would get a lot of calls. And in the testimonial, or her quote was that she gets 1/50th the calls that she used to get from paid care providers.
Wow.
And that to us is like music to our ears. As someone who knows how stressful those calls can be, I've been in meetings before and my phone's blowing up from my mom, and it's always tough to know, is this something that's a delusion, right? Or is this something that's more real and there's real present danger? And so just being able, in this home that I was talking about, they're able to put the woman who has dementia on a call with her daughter, and her daughter can make her feel calm and help redirect her. All of our companions, we use various sources to train them on caregiving techniques. We've learned a lot from Alzheimer's Association of America trainings, Mayo Clinic trainings, and there's a lot of learnings there that we bake into our AI companion, so they know how to redirect someone from a place of anxiety to a place of calm. I'd say fundamentally what we're trying to do is push cortisol out of the brain wherever possible that causes anxiety and stress, and bring oxytocin into the brain that makes someone feel loved and connected.
Without the medication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's often, there's some people that, especially people that aren't, familiar with dementia or Alzheimer's, that might take a view that what we're doing is maybe tricking people, right? Or doing something that's not fair, right? And it's interesting because, my mother, her vascular dementia comes from a brain aneurysm she had. And so we really need to keep her calm because we don't want to trigger another one of those that might actually kill her. And so the moment that I was that I really realized that this is something that I thought was pretty magical and wanted to bring to others was I was trying to help my mom underneath the sink. She had like a wooden panel had come off and she couldn't get my dad to fix it. And she's like, hey, like, can you help fix this? And so I was there, I was trying to fix it. She comes over, she's like, you can't do that. And I'm like, what can I do? And it's like, you need wood glue. And I'm like, oh, okay, mom, I have wood glue. She's like, oh, okay. Well, a minute later, she comes by. You can't do that. Okay, mom, like I have wood glue. Like, it's okay. The third time she comes over, you see where this is going. She comes back like, you can't do that. You need to, and she's escalating things. I'm escalating things. It's like you try as hard as you can to be patient and have this. But at some point, the fourth time I hit my head on the thing underneath the sink and I'm frustrated. And for people with dementia or Alzheimer's, empathy to them is a superpower. They are present and they're ultra present in the moment because they don't have as much going on, right? They're not sitting there thinking about memories. They're ultra present. And so they reflect back to you often the energy that you give to them. And so my mom was picking up on my frustration and she was kind of like, why are you frustrated at me? Because she didn't realize she had come over a few times. And so I put her on with the video version of myself, the AI Matt, a video version. And she immediately like, boom, just calmed down. Because AI Matt is me at my best. He is calm, collected. He's smiling. Hey, I'm here for you, mom. What can I do for you? And if she gets confused, that's okay, mom. Right? And he has infinite patience too. Is the other beauty of it. And that's what we're seeing. Where our AI companions are patient enough to have conversations with the people living with dementia that many other people aren't patient enough to have with them. And so we're seeing really good benefits there too. One of the other success stories in our pilot has been with a family where this woman, she was a really successful business person into real estate, commercial real estate. She has Alzheimer's. She's pretty advanced and has so her husband is the primary caregiver, no children. They have a live-in care provider as well, who's, at that point that they become the primary caregiver. And what we heard from them is that for the longest time, she didn't have any kind of sense of pride or happiness. And, there's often shame is a dominant emotion that folks in this space feel when they're realizing that they can't keep track of the things that they once did. But what they often do with this woman is they actually tell her she has a meeting. And so she sits down. Her husband's is the likeness that she's speaking with, the AI version of her husband. But they used to do a lot of investing. And so he'll ask her questions about real estate investing. And we'll have like she's actually one of our best users. She talks for over an hour a day on average with our companions. And not only does her husband and the caregiver get a break, but she comes out of those kind of with her head up and her chest out, right? She's really proud because she's now having conversations about looking up comps in the real estate world and all these. I'm not a real estate person, so I don't, but, and they were just like, the coolest thing is that she's walking around with pride, right? So, and some of that comes from the fact that, again, the AI versions or the companions that we're creating for them have this infinite patience. And so, and I said earlier, I said AI me is me at my best. It's AI me is actually better than I am in some way.
I feel like that particular person has herself back a little bit, right? She remembers who she was, and that was probably what she thinks of as her best self. And so that's where the pride comes from, and that's why she feels better. There's got to be like, everybody has a different version of that, right? Like, and some people maybe go to a younger place. Is that true? Are there varying ages of where they go, where they're most comfortable?
Yeah, I think that one thing that is certainly true in this world is that it presents itself differently with everyone. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone's unique, right? And so there are certain things that definitely are very common, right? And I'd say that some of the things that are common in this space is that when you start to lose your memory, it's usually the short-term memory, right? That you start to lose. It's people that can't keep track of the conversation that they're in the middle of or minutes later. And then it seemingly works its way backwards. And so most people are still able to keep their memories from childhood a lot longer than they are the more recent ones. And that makes it so that sometimes people can have better conversations about those things. That's why photo reminiscence is a really popular intervention in this world, to get people to look at photos and talk about them from, their history, because they can still remember them. But yeah, so it's different in everybody. I think that one of the things that's definitely true about what you just said or asked is the identity of that person can often become stronger in people with dementia and Alzheimer's, like the way that they identified. I mean, identity is a huge thing in us, right? Identity-based marketing, right? Like, it's kind of how the politics works, is that they try to get you to identify, right, as a certain way or not. And so that's definitely becomes pretty strong in people, and the independent people are fiercely independent, and personalities sometimes become stronger in this space.
Do you think about producing AI clones of younger relatives for certain people, if that would help them?
Do you mean like de-age people, or
Like if, like my mother, her sister had Alzheimer's dementia. I don't know which one, but she they lived worlds apart. My mom is in South Africa and my aunt was in England. So whenever they would get on a call, my aunt would think my mom was still 20 and they were, in their 80s or 90s. Would something like that, like being able to see somebody at the age you still want them to be helpful and even possible? I don't know.
there's certainly some models out there that are doing de-aging that are interesting, that try to kind of guess what you'd look like if you were younger. I think some of that stuff's been really explored in Hollywood a lot. But and then there's this concept that you can kind of start with any picture or video, and you can use that to create a clone. So if you had older video or older pictures, you could use those to start to create some digital twins. We don't really do anything like that at Vallige. We don't necessarily create younger versions of people. It's an interesting thing to think about. It's certainly true. I smiled when you first started talking about this, because my mom will often see herself in the mirror and kind of get spooked in a way. Like, we've had a few like kind of funny moments where she goes, "Oh my God," that, because she thinks she thinks she's her mother.
Yeah.
Is what
Yeah.
happens, because she looked a lot like her mom, and so and she doesn't think that she's as old as she is.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. I mean, the time thing, a lot of people shift kind of, recently. And again, these are things that are kind of common, or you hear these stories. And again, I'm lucky enough to get to spend a lot of time with caregivers in this world, and over the last year and a half, I really immersed myself into it. But there is a sense that sometimes what you'll get is, in my mom's version of this, my mom's story was, recently my mom doesn't wear a lot of makeup. She'll occasionally put on lipstick, and she got up in the middle of the night. My dad was like, "What are you doing?" And it was, "I'm getting ready for work." And it's like, okay, all right. My dad's trying to deal with it, but no, she got full on dressed up, all made up, like full on, did the whole thing. I think mascara and all this stuff. I'm not a makeup person, obviously.
I'm not
And
either.
she thought she had to go to work, but it was when she was a waitress back in her early 20s in Madison, Wisconsin, where my parents are from. And that's like what she needed to go to. And sometimes it's, oh, the baby, right? Like, hey, I can't find the baby, right? So there's these different things that people think that are kind of the reasoning for some of this. And, from a psychological aspects, like, there's different points where the theory, I think, is that people revert back to sometimes where they felt safest, or as like a protector. And I think that's where the baby thing comes from sometimes, because that's like a common one for my mom. There's often the middle of the night, like, "Oh my gosh, where's the baby?" And my dad will have to try to kind of redirect her away from that, which is sometimes challenging in the middle of the night, because he's not fully lucid at that point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Does the Vallige, do you call it a companion, or what do you call it? The system?
We say we offer a service and we make software, but the actual one you're talking to them, we call them companions.
Okay.
We also, again, create more linear content like these videos or these poems, and we just present them as what they are. Like, here's a video, and we never want to lie, like, right? That's not the deal. We'll upfront about, hey, this is what we're doing, right? Like, we're creating this, and we're creating this content using software, right? And with my mom, I'll tell her, hey, like, she'll ask sometimes, like, hey, who did you really write this poem? And I'm like, well, mom, I created it with the help of some software, right? And with my mom talking to like the AI version of me, I told her, like, hey, mom, this is the very first moment I did it. I was in the same room with her. I was setting her up on it. Like, she knew the real me is right here. This is something. I think my mom, she has an understanding that technology can do these things, right? Like, we live in a world where people a long time ago knew that Jurassic Park those weren't real dinosaurs, right? And so
Yeah.
I think my mom knew at that point that I was next to her that this was like technology that was being used to do this. Now, then I went over and I got underneath the sink and tried to fix this thing while she talked to it for 5 minutes, maybe longer. I'm not that good with I'm not that handy that I got done that fast. But, and I think at some point in time, she lost track of that, right? She felt that she was talking to the real me. And then when I came back, she was just giggling, actually. I still remember it because it was pretty clunky at first. We hadn't really dialed it in yet. And just like any Zoom call or you have kind of that lag, or you're talking over someone. And so she found it she found it funny that would happen, like, because it would interrupt her. And I think that there's something there as well. And I've heard this anecdotally, and I think there might be a study on it, but it's that those mistakes can feel very humanizing to them, that there's other people that are also making mistakes, right? Because they again, that goes back to that embarrassment or shame when they can't remember someone's name, right? My niece's good friend helps us occasionally drive my mom to her day respite program, picks her up and drops her off. And often my mom can't find her name, but yet knows, and she'll get that shame or embarrassment, right? You can kind of sense it in her and so, we all know, and we try to protect her from that feeling, and we'll just jump in and be like, hey, Molly, it's Matt, or when Molly comes in and she's really good about it. She's actually fantastic. I mean, it's also amazing to see how good some of this younger generation is with various things that would have, I don't know, that are challenging to deal with socially and whatnot. And they're just very compassionate in some ways. And so she comes in and she always goes, hey, it's Molly, Riley's friend. And we'll just come out right away and just, defuse the situation.
It's amazing. What innovations are you thinking of for going further with it?
Yeah. Well, really excited about, again, what the technology can do. And again, AI is always a loaded term, because what is AI, right? Like, and it gets used for a lot of things, and then things that existed previously, all of a sudden they're AI now. And I have a computer science degree, so I studied neural networks as back in university, and when they were still a pipe dream that they could somehow be utilized. And then all of a sudden, we had that moment later on, and I guess the AlexNet moment, or 2012, I think, which was kind of the explosion of modern AI. But anyway, we're really excited about, first of all, there's all the content that we can create for people. I think I was saying earlier that my mom has vascular dementia from a brain aneurysm, and you had mentioned kind of like the alternatives to drug them, and it's like very true that in this world, if someone's getting agitated, or some people even get aggressive, right? Especially in memory care centers or day respite programs, sundowning is a common thing. And you have this, okay, let's, we need them to calm down. Let's give them a drug of some kind. Well, that's not awesome.
No.
Right? Like, I want my mom to be as lucid as possible for the time she has left to try to interact with us and whatnot. And so to try to dope her isn't something I'm very excited about. And it also takes a while to kick in. And so we're really excited about what we're seeing, which is we're able to kind of calm people down instantly. And again, we're We're doing a study right now, and we'll do more and try to, again, publish those results to try to show what we're able to do. But the hope is that we can offer something that's non-pharmaceutical and works almost instantly to try to calm some people down. So the more ways that we can do that for this diverse population of people, the better, right? And so some people respond to conversations for a while. Some people don't want to talk. People with Alzheimer's often will eventually lose the ability to speak. It's actually like a muscular thing because the plaques and tangles attack the brain. They'll start using their muscles a lot less to speak because they withdraw, become more quiet. And over time, it actually can get to the point where the muscles atrophy so bad that these people are unable to really eat on their own. And so conversing with our companions, fantastic. We're already talking to some speech therapists about how we can work with their clients because they're working with people that need to practice speaking and they think this is great. But that interactive conversation isn't for everybody, right? Some people respond better to other forms of content. And so our daily videos are pretty popular. Almost, we have a really high completion rate on the videos. They're about 5 minutes long. They watch them all the way through. They're starting every day. It kind of is almost universal that people like to see someone that they know and share information, and they can kind of do that. The mood shifters, that we call them, the poems that kind of are uplifting, they're kind of like our quick hits. Like if someone's down, having a rough day, I've used that often with my mom when I'm up in Reno where we're headquartered and I live, and I'll be on the phone with her and I will get her over to the iPad and be like, hey, Mom, listen to that poem that, your sister sent you. And it will just change her whole mood, right? That's what we call mood shifters. So I'm excited about more content. I also think that our talk stories, which are our calls, I think those are really exciting. We've recently added the ability so that our companions can actually share pictures. So, do you want to look at some old photos from last year's wedding, your grandson's wedding? And my mom can go, yeah. And our AI companion we use MCP servers and tool calls and all the technical stuff in the AI world. And we can actually on the iPad load up pictures. And my mom's able to ask questions and be like, oh, I can't remember the name. Who's that person on the left? Right. And AI Mac, give her the answer. And then she go, oh, okay, do you have any more? And go to the next picture. And so I get really excited about the agentic AI stuff because it's not only, it's like I try to do screen shares with my mom. It's so hard to do a screen share. Like I can't, I got to get her to do, it's just like impossible. But if I can get her just to start the call, because it's already AI, it has all this controls, like we can do more there than almost a human can, which is, again, pretty fantastic. And I think that there's so many examples of these. We're getting ready to make an announcement. Again, it's been in our pilot and in beta. We have an AI assistant named Val, to go with Vallige. Val is able to do things like help you coordinate rides. So one of the largest pain points or most common pain points for a caregiver is coordination. You're trying to coordinate everything to do with your normal life. I always tell people, my mom put my dad on her back and carried him through life. She ran the house. She took us everywhere. She got us signed up for the stuff, there to the stuff. Then she added a career once I was old enough to get into school, so that, because I'm the youngest, and she had a whole career as a director of human resources. And, she did all the stuff. And my dad never cooked, never cleaned, didn't even know how to shop. Right. And now he has to do all of that and care for my mom and try to get doctor's appointments in a system that doesn't make that very easy. So coordination for caregivers is one of the biggest time. I think that I saw a study today. I went to a webinar, and I think it's something like 11 hours a week is like the average in coordination or something that a caregiver spends. Those are all unpaid hours that don't bring much joy to anybody. So now, and one of the other things that we have often is occasionally we need help finding a ride for my mom. My dad, this is just, I'll hit this point one more time just because I found out when I looked into this and I saw what was happening to my dad, that a spouse who's the primary caregiver for someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, if they feel physical or emotional strain, their mortality risk goes up 63% within 4 years. And that's kind of where I was like, whoa, okay. Like this is really like cemented the mission for me of what we're trying to do is try to support these caregivers. And I flippantly would tell people sometimes that I didn't create this company to try to save my mom. I created this company to try to save my dad. And not to say that everything's about comforting my mom, because again, my mom was the best. Like I really started with her. That's why I did what I did. The company's different, right? The company was like, okay, hey, like there's these other people like my dad. They're drowning. Like they need support. My dad actually, I can't say it specifically because of the caregiving stress, but my dad has macular degeneration now, and he lost the ability to drive because he's now legally blind because he had some blood vessels burst in his eye at different. He had both eyes separate times, and so coordinating rides now has become very difficult. Neither of my parents can drive, and yet they're still at home and they want to. I think this might be the last year. We'll see. Again, I'm trying to keep them there as long as possible. But so my mom goes to this day respite center. I mentioned, my niece's friend. I usually take Mondays and my sister takes Wednesdays because she lives close by. Sometimes work things happen and I can't get there, and it's like we need help with the ride. Well, that turns into a whole nother exercise that takes a lot of time, right? We're really lucky that my mom has a handful of friends that are just amazing and supportive and willing to give her rides when they can. And it turns into a little game of like, okay, I'm reaching out to someone on like a Sunday night because it's Monday morning. I need a ride because something came up, and then someone's busy and they don't, and it just turns into a phone tree thing. And so now we have this assistant where you could say, hey, Val, like I need help with a ride for Thursday because or I need help with a new caregiver because the caregiver canceled due to their life, situation that came up. And the agentic AI assistant, Val, can use, all the tools to basically send text messages first to the first person. And again, that's available. And if they come back and say, hey, I can't do it, then Val goes, oh, thanks, really appreciate it, and goes to the next one. And so that's something that I think has been really, really cool to see start to work. It's kind of the promise of these AI agents or assistants. And so the agentic stuff really excites me. Like, I like to think we're going to get to the point within a year that we could help you schedule appointments, right? Get you doctor's appointments, because we can, we're pretty adept at using real-time voice, conversational voice agents as they're called in the industry.
I think many people will be interested in it. And I'd love to, it seems like it should be a really good companion for people, I imagine. So how do you get the word out? How do you mass produce it, get it in front of more people?
Great question. That's what we're shifting into that world right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing I think about this user group, this population of people is, they'll obviously tend to be older, right? Because you have folks that are suffering from memory impairment issues that usually come later in life. But there's a very real life network that materializes in this world. There are the facilities that you'll hear about. And the word facility is an interesting word. They call it the F word in the industry, because the same thing, the industry, the word patient is not used very often. The reason for that is kind of dignity. It can also set someone off, right? Like it's a very loaded word. We generally use the term person living with dementia, person with dementia. At Vallige, we like to say person living with dementia because we want to really focus on that living piece. But so you have person with dementia, person living with dementia instead of patient. There's these communities, which is the word that we try to use instead of facility, which is memory care, assisted living, all these types of places. And they show, they are a key part of this circle of care, this chain of care that exists. There's also day programs, day respite centers, of which I mentioned earlier. My mom goes to one in Orinda, California. It's a great one called Lark. And they're designed to, colloquial, some people call them dementia daycare, but they have these day programs. I think they're amazing. There's these two women that run the one my mom goes to. They're just caring people that are just great. They just shine, like a light shines out of them. And I go, when I take my mom there, not every time, she often will be reluctant to go. If she, sometimes she'll make a joke about, hey, I'm just taking her to preschool or something like that. My mom's very self-deprecating. And every time she comes out, she's just absolutely happy and she had a great time. And I like to think it's exercise for the mind, body, and soul. So they play some games, they do some stuff that like activates, it's like history related stuff. They usually do some kind of physical game. Maybe they play cornhole or something like that. And then they have someone come in and play music, and it's great. It's awesome. Like I want, when you first sign up, you go for a whole day. So anyways, there's those facilities, so we've been doing a lot of real life networking, specifically in the Bay Area and Reno, because that's like our two home bases. We started the company when I was still living in San Francisco and then moved over to Reno, Nevada. And we have a good partnership with the Respite program there. So there's these real life where we're in the Alzheimer's Association. And then, so we've been evangelizing what we're doing, sharing what we're doing, gathering feedback from the care communities to understand not only what can we learn from what works in like the real life day programs, but where people might be a little sensitive to some of the stuff we're doing and how we can protect against that. And so, yeah, we're going into a few more cities this year. We've already started. We have our first families in Austin, Texas, and we're just about to go into the first area where we're making our first, I guess you'd say, business development hire. And we're going in towards Detroit, Michigan, that area, and trying to see, again, starting from scratch, how quickly we can connect with that whole community of the real life world. And then there's obviously the digital and the social aspects as well. But this community is a little bit harder to reach sometimes on that. But there are a growing number of people on Instagram, TikTok that have really good content to help caregivers, because it can be just a really challenging thing to live with. My dad will tell you that they had their golden years that they saved up and waited their whole life to go do stuff that taken from them. And then there's kids in the sandwich generation where there's these, mothers of young children also having to care for 80-year-olds. And you're just, holy cow, how do you juggle all that? Right. Like, and then it's a bit thankless. Often the person that you've just cared for yesterday will be like, how come you haven't been around in forever? Right. And you have to kind of absorb that in a way, and you don't want to react. And it's just really challenging. And so I find that there's quite a few of the folks on social media that do a really good job of empathizing, sympathizing with the people and what they're going through. And, and then some people I think have chosen even not to have kids, or because caregiving for an adult parent got in the way, or like there's all kinds of different experiences here in this world. And, but yeah, so we try to first start in the real world, introducing ourselves, telling what we're talking about, and try to figure out. There's also caregiver coffees and all these kind of things. And it's kind of an interesting throwback to this real world marketing or ecosystem building. And then there's the digital side, which is, okay, like we specifically focus on content that both educates and is compassionate, so that when you follow us or see us on socials, you get something that might be a tip or a trick, right? Like, hey, I'm struggling getting this person dressed in the morning. What can you do to help me? Well, offer them a choice, right? That it's kind of, there's a lot of lessons that sounds like when you're trying to get a toddler to eat vegetables or something, right? Like, people love choice and agency. And actually, I find that that's the most important thing, because my mom's constantly, the number one thing that she will complain about is that we don't let her choose things. We're trying to tell her what to do all the time. And so when you give someone a choice, they have agency, and it's a good feeling. So we try to share a bunch of that stuff, and then also a lot of the compassionate stuff. So it's a combination of education and just compassion is what we're focused on.
Interesting that, it's an AI forward product that you actually have to be very real life with.
Yeah.
In your networking and in your marketing. And, throughout my podcast series, I hear over and over again, human connection is way more important now that we have AI. So it's, I think it's both for your business. You're using AI for good, as well as, you recognize the value of human connections.
Absolutely. That comes up a lot in this space, that the human connection and the human understanding and all that from on the caregiver side is just invaluable. And, the first thing that some people ask us is, are we trying to replace caregivers? And absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. We are trying to augment them, right? We view what we're building as an Iron Man suit for caregivers and care providers. We're trying to give them all the tools, and now we've added Val, which is like Jarvis. And we're trying to give them, hey, you need a break here? Bam. We also have medication tracking software that helps you monitor or track sleep behavior, bowel movements. That one's not as exciting, but important sometimes, and just all kinds of stuff. So we have different tools that we provide people. We have a feature that's a caregiver journal. So we ask the caregiver to just speak and share up to a minute of they can go longer, but we only need about 45 seconds. And we take that audio and we actually run it through a tool from a company called Canary Speech, and they analyze vocal biomarkers to understand stress and anxiety levels in that person, so that you can monitor over time and see, hey, wow, like this, it looks like my dad's really down right now. And then maybe at that point in time, we ask my brother from Colorado to come in and spend a week here to give a longer break. That technology also does preventive screening for things like Parkinson's and depression and other diseases that someone who's giving care is more likely to get because of the stress of caregiving. So we do everything possible to try to support that paid caregiver, both family and on the paid side. We're just trying to do it in a way that, again, really just supports everyone. Our company's called Vallige because we put AI in your village. We think it takes a village to do this, and everyone needs support. And we say care for the caregiver. So you mentioned earlier, we do comfort. Comfort is comfort the person with dementia, care for the caregiver, and then connect the village is what we focus on. And yeah, it's something that we believe that caregivers are pretty sacred. I could rally off a bunch of stats, but there's over 12 million family caregivers for people with Alzheimer's and dementia in America today, and they spend 19 billion hours a year unpaid caregiving. And there's various estimates, and they use some combination of minimum wage and what the average salary of a caregiver is to get to like $400+ billion a year. That's just lost wages, and many people make a lot more money than that. And then caregivers also, it's a pretty, I think that the stat I saw today in this webinar, again, I went to, it's the ACL. It's a caregiver organization that's putting on an AI caregiving prize. They said 37% of paid caregivers, that this is their job, are at or near the poverty line. So and they compared it to like the wages are competing with like the fast food service industry. And so it's a thankless job. It's a tough job, and it's not a highly paid job. No. And so if we can make it a little bit easier, we will.
It's a very good reason to do something to make their lives a little bit better, since they're providing such a valuable service.
Yeah, I think that the caregiver needs to be protected. When my mom got diagnosed with dementia, we all understood, and my families, we're pretty connected and close and fairly educated. And we sat there and we got this dementia diagnosis, and we had no clue what it was going to do to my dad. Like we had no clue we're all going to go through. But no one ever says like, hey, this other person just got, like my mom got a diagnosis. Like they should have also said, hey, like my dad, like you just got this too, right? Like you're a patient as much as she's a patient, and the system doesn't really work that way, and it's challenging, and it's not always a spouse, which makes that obvious. And again, there's a whole generation of people that again, the sandwich generation, as they're being called, is they get stuck in between this, like raising kids and raising adults, or caring for adults and raising kids. Yeah. And I think that's the one thing I really wish that would become more prevalent is and I wish the system had more in place for especially for family caregivers, and just to protect the health and their mental health as well. We focus on giving respite and a break. And there's a great charity organization called Hilarity for Charity, started by Seth Rogen and his wife, Lauren Miller Rogen. Her mom had early onset Alzheimer's, and they saw what it did, and they created this organization that donates hours of caregiving to people that need it, family unpaid caregivers that can't afford it, can't get it. They do grants for people, and it really helps the one thing that we know that reduces stress and anxiety in caregivers is a break, is respite. And we also know that stress and anxiety lead to the increased mortality risk. And so I think the system should do more, but it isn't currently doing more in that world. And so nonprofits like Clarity for Charity are out there, and we're trying to go build a business around providing care to or providing respite to caregivers at a far less than like what it costs to get a human to come in and come into your house.
Recording of the engagement, the interactivity with like, does the app software record?
Yeah, you can call it an app. We have the app is on an iPad. I guess to be specific, we have an iPad that we supply to our families, and our app runs on it. And then we have an app that runs on iPhones. And then we also give them an Apple TV and an app that runs on the Apple TV. The Apple TV is meant to be more for activities. So when I come back, I like to spend some time with my mom doing something, because if I just have a conversation with her, it's not the most exciting or most fun for me, especially. It can get repetitive pretty quickly. And so it's nice to have activities. And so on the Apple TV, we not only can look at all the slideshows, and the slideshows all are narrated. So when you upload a picture, we use Amazon's recognition service to understand who that is in the picture. We use LLMs to create captions, and then we create voice for that. So basically the whole slideshow is narrated, which is nice. But also we have games. And so growing up, my mom loved Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, and we would eat dinner while watching those two shows every night almost. So we have a game that's kind of like Hangman or somewhat similar to Wheel of Fortune, I guess, in that you're guessing the letters and words. And we use both people and places as categories, and the names come from, in my situation, my mom's life history, right? And so it'll be a family member, and then when she gets it right, then we show a slideshow of that person, of pictures with that person. If it's, Madison, Wisconsin, where my mom was born, and I also went to university there, it'll show a bunch of pictures, sometimes from when she was a kid, sometimes from when I went to school there. And so it's just a great way to have activities and enjoy my time with my mom, because that's like what I want, like I know that she's not making memories, but I still am. And so, yeah, we focus on, that's the connection piece. And then, sorry, you originally asked about the app, and I guess like the monitoring, maybe, I think was kind of where you're going.
Yeah, just recording. Like I imagine there's a lot of interesting data there from recording the interaction that happen.
Absolutely. So I think I mentioned earlier, we use Canary speech for voice. And when someone with dementia has a conversation, one of our talk stories, the whole transcript gets saved. We summarize it using AI tools. We pull out action items that might have come out of it. If she's trying to talk to my dad and she's talking about cooking dinner, it will say, hey, let's not cook dinner. Like, I'll pick something up on the way home or whatever it is. And so if that happens, it'll tell my dad, hey, like, you agreed to grab dinner. You should grab something on the way home. Even though my mom will remember it, you still want to know that things. And if she mentioned, hey, I'm going to go wander outside, we actually have a human in the loop tool that, through another great partner, Poku Labs, which we can detect certain language. And if that language gets used or repeated, we will actually text someone, like a direct text to the person that's responsible for them, and say, hey, by the way, they say they're going to go outside for a walk when they're not supposed to. So we do have all that. The audio also gets run through Canary speech to measure stress and anxiety. And we use that signal to understand if we're doing a good job of redirecting. And thus far, we're seeing a lot of good data that shows that these conversations often start with the person in a stressed out or anxious state, and we're ending them in a far better, more calm, and the emotions that are showing up are positive instead of negative. And we also use a tool from a company called Blue Sky AI. They use facial biomarkers to do analysis, again, of emotion and stress and whatnot. And that tool is used in doctors' offices in the UK to diagnose postpartum depression. So that it's, validated and used. And in the medical world. And then the Canary Speech is also part of the ambient listening product from Microsoft's that's going to doctor's offices. So I like to think we're grabbing the best of all the tools that are out there and trying to put them to work for a population that needs it. But yeah, we definitely use advanced tools to understand the emotion of the person with dementia and use that to try to get them into a better place or continue the conversation that they're enjoying. And we, for instance, our daily digest videos, and again, everyone can turn stuff off, right? Like we give as much flexibility to the families as possible because we believe families should have control. And that's something I believe in. And then everyone has different feelings about different aspects. But the daily digest videos, because it's just a one-way video that the person's watching, that's where we use the facial biomarker measurements from Blue Sky to understand which things interested them. And we might mention that, today was Elvis Presley's birthday, and they might light up. Well, okay, well then maybe they really like Elvis Presley, and we'll drop an Elvis Presley fact in the next day. And if they light up again, we start to understand more about them and can bring them what interests them. And I think the content that we're creating for these people I like to think of it as being heartwarming. I like to think that it's something that I'm proud and happy to put with my mom. We talked about how there's drugs. We talked about how there's, different ways that you try to help this person calm down. Well, one of the things that we started seeing kind of early on was that my mom would watch General Hospital for 4 hours because she'd sit there and she'd get drawn in, and she used to watch it, back in the day. She was a soap opera person, but it's just there's no way you're going to convince me that's good for her brain in any way, right? We're not only good for her brain, I don't know if it's good for her emotional state. And what we're doing, I think we'll keep measuring and we'll keep testing it, but so far we're seeing that we're able to have a positive effect on emotions, and that's kind of the focus. So yeah, we capture the transcripts so everyone can see them, and you can know if there's something to be worried about or something that you learn that's new. And that's another thing that I mentioned earlier, that I think that the AI version of me is actually better than me. Well, in many ways he is, or it is, but often when you want to redirect someone that's got dementia, you want to draw on a story that they still can remember. We call these hero stories, and we do an interview process where we try to capture as many of these as possible. Well, my sister might share a story that she had with my mom when she was younger that I wasn't even alive for, because she's 11 years older than me, because we have 4 kids and I'm the baby here. But it might be that AI Matt at that moment in that conversation with my mom, which that story that my sister shared really would be the thing that would be perfect for her. And we have this shared knowledge pool, or whatever you want to call it. We call it the village brain. And AI Matt can actually draw on that. Even if I've never even heard that story from my sister, or I was alive, I could be like, hey mom, remember that time when you and Sarah went to, the mall and she got her first Cabbage Patch Kid? And, and that's where you're like, whoa, okay, this is, again, I'm not going to be able to draw on that. I might not even make the connection at that time because I might be emotionally not in the right place to fully, and let alone I couldn't even draw on that. And what we're seeing is, well, we can recognize that this is what should be done, is to redirection towards something like that. And oh, by the way, here's some options, and this one looks best. And maybe Matt never even had that memory, right? And so that's another thing. I get too excited about this. I could go on and on.
No, but
I'm sorry.
I like that because it shows the power of one human could never do that. You have to have AI to be able to digest all of the memories and then be able to pull the one that might be most beneficial in real time. That is that what does that make sense? I mean, am I understanding what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's one element is just the knowledge itself. And if my sister has a memory that she's never shared with me for whatever reason, but she shares it with the Vallige app, because we do a lot of questions and stuff to ask you and pull stuff out, and she can share something, and then if it's AI Matt, me, I wouldn't have access to that. And so there's the is this the right thing to do at the right time? I think people that are like trained caregivers are pretty good at understanding redirection and managing their emotions. Most of us aren't trained, and most of us can get emotional pretty quick and lose our patience. And also there's the element of, I think we all do this when we go home for the holidays or whatever it is. We regress, right? Like we turn in, especially those of us that are kids, like we turn into the 13-year-old version of ourselves. And I'm like, Mom, I got, there's like, that was me under the sink. I'm like, Mom, I told you, and you're like, so there's like the emotional piece, and then there's the actual knowledge piece. And for sure, like as far as being non-emotional, AI is pretty amazing. As far as being able to pull all that knowledge at an instant, way better than what we are, right? We're pretty not great at that. I shouldn't say bad at it, but yeah. So that's kind of the promise. And then sometimes my mom will actually share a story that I might not have heard or don't really remember. And to get the transcripts and read that, and we capture that audio too. And there's more stuff we do. We have the ability to show old pictures, hear her stories, and then capture that audio with those pictures so that the rest of the family can now see the wedding picture we show her and then hear her talking about it. Right. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we can do where we try to just make the whole experience, wherever we can, we try to add optimism and joy. Because that's fundamentally, I think, what really is needed in the world of caring for someone with dementia and Alzheimer's. You like to hope that somehow things could be better because they feel like they're perpetually going to get worse or inevitably going to get worse. And then there's just wherever we can find joy and laughs or smiles, we try to do that as well.
Yeah. So important. There's something that keeps coming back for me, it's going to sound a little bit off topic, but, SEO, and people are talking about AEO now with GEO, generative engine optimization. Recently, I heard HEO as well, which is the human experience is also very important. I think what you're doing here with Vallige is also engineering the experience for the caregiver as well as the person living with dementia.
Absolutely. And we're trying to also do it for the family member that has relentless guilt. I saw a great post, I mentioned some of these, the social media folks that do stuff, and I saw a great post, and I'm totally blanking on that user handle right now, but it was just a slideshow about how you have guilt for not pursuing a diagnosis earlier. You have guilt for not learning quicker that the spouse was going to go there. You have guilt because you can't be there. You have guilt when you finally take the time to go to a vacation because they can't go on it. Right. Mm-hmm. My nephew got married last year, actually in South Africa. And we were in Durban.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the first one of these events that my parents couldn't make and was really challenging. And I had to make a decision because I kind of get the opportunity to be the one that takes my parents a lot of places, and just couldn't make it happen. Just couldn't really. And then if we take them, it changes the whole adventure for everybody else. I mean, going to Africa is like, my whole family's never been there. It's our first time. We want to do a safari. We want to go see the penguins. We want to do it all. And all of a sudden you bring along two 80-year-olds that take like full-time care. I think that's the hardest part. And that's why so much we focus on that connect, the village piece, is because I saw not only, it was terrible on my mom, terrible. And I feel so bad for her, and it's brutal. But often she's able to just forget the stuff that happened that's bad and move forward. And that's the double-edged sword of it. And then I saw what was happening to my dad. But really, I saw how I was pulling my family apart because my sister, she would have events, and my mom was amazing and would help and take 50% of the workload off of my sister would have 50 people over. Well, my mom's going to both prepare, clean everything, and it's going to make it easier. Now, my mom's not providing that, and my mom's going to take a lot of attention from my sister, or the rest of us. And so now sometimes it's easier not to have them participate in events. Yeah. And then when they're not participating in events, sometimes that means that I have to watch out for them. And so I don't get to go to certain, and that's the part where the family gets pulled apart. And that's why we're trying to really do what we can to keep the family connected and feel connected. And, my brother's out, I mentioned, in Colorado, and he often feels the guilt of like, hey, myself and my sister are doing most of the work, and what can he do? Well, what he can do now is, again, participate in this. He can upload the pictures from my nephew's graduation last week so that when my dad sits here at home, he can turn on the Apple TV and they can watch a slideshow. And it's a half hour to an hour that my dad's now getting a break or some good activities, right? And so it's trying to make it so that everyone can support and do their part so that they feel better about themselves, because so much of the pain is this psychological thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only the person living with dementia, it's everyone else around them, right? That you're impacting their lives as well.
It's I don't know. Again, I'm trying to find a word, but I don't know. It's pretty rough without choosing some words I'd rather use. That it's, I have a presentation that I use. We're a startup, so we're always trying to raise money from investors at this point. And one of the slides I have, it actually uses kind of a visual of this brown cardboard box that has a warning label on it. And it says, warning, like caregiving causes a 63% mortality risk increase. And the reason I use this cardboard box with this warning label is because, and the way I say it is that, every year, 500,000 Americans get this box of crap delivered to their doorstep. 500,000 Americans every year get diagnosed with dementia. And the person sitting next to them in that room is now got that, for the rest of this person's life to deal with. And it's not that there's nothing good about it, but there's a lot of bad stuff that comes with it, and just emotional strain and stress, and it's incessant, right? Or relentless, like it doesn't stop. And so many of the tools, we immediately started looking at fall monitoring, cameras, that kind of stuff, because they'll inevitably fall. My mom had her first fall back in 2021, I think. It was right in the middle of the COVID. And it's like you start looking for all these things, and then what happens is now all of a sudden it's like I'm getting pings left and right from the Ring camera that someone's moving, and it's like I'm looking, and then it's like, okay, well then it's like, okay, there's too many of these, I got to turn some off, or you tune them out, and then it's like, okay, I haven't seen one in a while. Like then it's like I got to go look in, and it's just something that comes to dominate your life, and it just takes over a lot of time and energy, and and to everyone. And it's just emotionally draining. But I just want to say that I am an optimist that technology is going to help this get a lot better. I'm optimistic that we'll be able to provide better support for caregivers. And also I'm optimistic that in the near future, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years, we're going to find a lot more medical-based solutions to solve some of these. Like, I don't think caregiving is going away this century. Maybe if the humanoid robots really show up and they're fantastic, but like, I think we're going to be caring for each other for a long time, and that's what we want to do at Vallige, is just support those people that are caring for others.
How much do you think your app is taking away stress from people, caregivers in general?
Tough thing to quantify. Very tough thing to quantify. I think that, that quote earlier about this woman getting essentially 2% of the calls that she used to get is a pretty awesome number to look at, because every time she got those calls, that was stress. And it's not like you turn that off after you get the call. It's like you get the call, you deal with it, and then you still have to have that decay of cortisol being going on in your brain. So I think we do a lot for people in that respect. I think that, one of my other favorite quotes is from the woman that's in a memory care facility, and her daughter goes over, and she said, I used to, every time I'd show up, my mom would be like, well, why haven't I seen you? And she says that she never gets that question anymore. Right.
There you go. Yeah.
And then there's we shared a study on our socials last week, I believe, about how sleep is a major factor. And there's a study that came out that showed that, like, in your 50s, 60s, if you get less than 6 hours of sleep a night, like your probability of getting dementia, like, skyrockets. And so, and again, that was on the study. Who knows? It might be 30s, 40s, right? Like it's just that study was contained to that age range, because that's this caregiving world. But this woman who's, again, the mom is in this memory care facility, most of the times her mom actually uses the talk story interactive calls has been in the middle of the night. And so at 2 a.m., she would have tried to call her daughter because she doesn't know why she's in this facility or where she is, or she's confused, and she's able to call her and get redirected by the AI version of her daughter, and her daughter gets to spend the night sleeping. That's invaluable, in my opinion, if we're helping her hold off those kind of things. And so, yeah, I think all these things add up to like a reason to be optimistic about how this tech's going to come in the future. And I also really am, I go to various conferences on the technology side with other conversational voice companies, right? And it's, if I was going to do a rough swag of it, I'd say out of the 100 companies in the room, 50 of them are trying to replace call center people, and the other 49, other than us, are trying to do outbound sales. And then we're sitting there doing what we're doing, right? Companies are trying to replace humans and jobs, and that's why it makes me feel good that we're doing something that's in a different direction. Again, AI for good. That's what we're trying to do is really use this tech and put it to use to help a vulnerable and underserved population.
Absolutely. Definitely sounds like that, Matt. What plans do you have for next year?
Yeah. Next year, it's about expansion and growth. We've done our pilot. We're ready to grow, and it's about more families, more users, and refining and adding value wherever possible, right? I'm really excited about this new assistant Val that we have that's going to help you coordinate rides and cover caregiving shifts, and who knows where that can go, right? We have a whole list of ideas, and it's about trying to figure out what's the priority and what. But like, I think all of us in every industry are increasingly or frequently being wowed. Stuff that we didn't think was possible is becoming possible.
Yeah.
Things that previously took years take minutes. Everyone's had that experience that you're like, whoa, like this part of my job used to take 10 hours and I just asked this agent to do it. And oh, by the way, now it can do it every night at 1 a.m. while I'm sleeping, and I can wake up and it's done. Right. Like it's like, okay, let's put that to work for these people. Let's put that to work for caregivers and people with this and that.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find more about Vallige?
Vallige.com, Vallige.com is probably the best place. We're actually just doing a pretty big refresh of our website. The website that we put up right away was kind of our get the basics out there in front of people. And now we're putting a lot more care into it and a lot more explanation. We have a lot of blogs that we've been writing over the last year or so to try to really, it's more the last 6 months, to really share our thinking on stuff and on our plans and why we do what we do. And we also have a whole series called Science Simplified, where we take the latest studies that are out there and we try to break them down into easier to digest words and things, because academic studies can be challenging, and often the numbers it's tough to even understand what they really are saying. And so we do that. And yeah, I'd say our website, vallige.care, is our Instagram handle, where we can also, where we share some of the tips and tricks about providing care and other, things that hopefully make caregivers feel seen.
Well, thank you so much for sharing so much about Vallige and your own experience, your personal experience. I'm sure that there are people out there that could benefit from it.
There are. Yeah, Suse, thank you very much for having me and chatting me with about this for so long. And again, if there's I hope that this helps reach at least one more person that finds out, and again, I think that hopefully if we do our jobs right, a lot more people will start to hear about what we're doing, and hopefully a lot more people will benefit from it.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Awesome.